Hello, hello. Happy Sabbath. Good afternoon, everybody. We're happy to be here with you, right? We are a young couple. We've been married for about 3+ years. Um, we're grateful for Sister Netza for taking this initiative to organize for the young people of Shekinah. And we're just happy to be here with you guys. We don't have the answer to everything. Life is something where you continuously grow, grow, grow. There's always something else to learn. But we are glad that you guys asked the questions. We want to add that God is not afraid of our questions. He's not afraid of our questions. He's a big God. The reality is we do tend to have more questions than answers. But the good thing is this is a safe place, and it's good for the young people to be able to ask these questions because, they're real. You guys are human beings, and we'll try our best to address them from a strong Christian perspective as best as we can, but try to be as real as possible as well.
Hi guys, it's Myriam. I had a good time with you guys this morning. This is part 2, just like Jonathan said. We're going to try to answer your questions as honestly and to the best of our capabilities. Again, we're learning as we go, but we'll try our best. So we have the questions here. Netza, you can put the PowerPoint.
I think you're on mute, Netza.
Okay, sorry.
No problem.
Okay, so I'll share my screen and I'll start with the PowerPoint. All right. This is the first question. What should you do if your boyfriend is not an Adventist?
Okay, what should you do if your boyfriend is not an Adventist? Great question, and I think it goes both ways, boyfriend or girlfriend. I think the first question with anybody in a relationship is, what is the purpose? What is the reasoning? What is your why? An important question that people don't ask enough is, what is your why? And the question you have to ask yourself is, why are you with them, right? That's a question that's normal to ask anybody. Like, why are we together? What do we get out of this? And so I think one of the biggest things to do is there's a reason to everything and there's a goal. What are your goals? Where are you trying to move to? And I think that if your boyfriend or girlfriend, your significant other is not Adventist, it's a tough situation, right? Because, they don't share a lot of the same basic beliefs as you. And you have to ask yourself the tough questions. So, how will that affect us down the road, right? Because the reality is, if you're in a relationship, the ultimate goal based off the Christian ideal is marriage. And so there's a lot of people who are in relationships, but aimlessly in relationships, right? Aimlessly in relationships. A relationship, sometimes you have a significant other and they make you feel good. Who doesn't like to wake up to nice text? And who doesn't like to have someone to call at their convenience? Who doesn't like to know that someone's thinking about them? I think it's normal for a human to want to be in a relationship. We were made to be, we are relational beings. Even those of us who are like homebodies and say to ourselves, we still need some type of attention or relationship to an extent. I think the danger when you have a non-Adventist is you just never know which direction you can go. If the idea is to eventually take it to a next level and get married, you're going to have a lot of different values, and it comes in handy. When you get married, or, marriage isn't, oh, I love you all day and, oh, I love being there. It's a lot of decisions you're making daily. How you going to spend your money? How you going to spend your time? How you going to raise your kids and things of those nature. And when you're not on the same page, it affects you. And I do want to throw this in too. There are people who can be your boyfriend or girlfriend who are Adventists and are not good. There's some Adventists who are not converted. There are some people, they're just Adventists because they go to church because their family brought them to church and they don't know God at all. There's some Adventists that are worse than people outside. Or they're Adventists, I guess, in name or association. But I think one thing is to ask God to show you, like, God, is this person, like, is this the person you have for me? Like, is this what you want from me, God? Because it's easier for them to pull you down and pull you away. Because if the person's not Adventist, they're not going to have the same boundaries. they're going to be like, all right, well, it's not a big deal if we do this. It's not a big deal if we, if it's not a big deal if we're having sex. It's not a big deal if, we're doing, putting all types of stuff in our body. And I think with that, why would they feel if they're not accountable to God? There's a lot of things that they won't mind. And little by little, you're going to see little by little their expectations and the things that they want and what their needs are in their relationship. And little by little, the stuff that'll make you uncomfortable and the stuff that makes you compromise. I would just say that at the get-go, but I want to give my wife a chance to.
Okay. I would agree with everything Jonathan said. The only thing I would add is, thinking about your purpose in the relationship and why you're with the person, but also try to think about the future. If you see yourself marrying that person, and if you do get married, what does the difference in faith mean for your children? So that's an important thing to consider. Would you be okay with your children not being Adventist, not going to church with you? And then that boyfriend not being Adventist, is that boyfriend or girlfriend not being Adventist, are they another religion, or are they not going to church at all? So, and then in trying to solve this issue also, it's important to assess where the person might be in terms of their receptiveness to the truth. So sometimes somebody might not be of the same faith, but it's just because they don't have all the information. They don't know about your faith. Maybe they don't know enough to be convicted or to be interested. So all these things need to be assessed.
Yeah. And the way you spend your time, it's interesting as an Adventist too. And I think sometimes what you can do is sometimes you have to look and ask other people. You don't have to be a guinea pig. You don't have to be a trial. It doesn't have to be an experiment. There are people who have made, decisions and got with people who were non-Adventists, and it was tough for them later. And so when you're young, you don't know what you're going to value when you get older. When you're young, you don't know what you're going to be. You don't know what's going to be important to you. And so I think it's important for you to ask other people who have been there. I've seen a lot of people who started and said, you know what? There's nobody out there. Let me get who I could get. I want to be loved. I want that attention. I want that, it's a high. Love is like a high, or what we consider what comes off as love and attention. It's a high. I don't think everybody wants attention, but I think you want attention from the right person and the person that makes you feel good. It's like a high but the high does not last. I know people who have gotten in relationships with non-Adventists, and the person, they have a lot of issues later, and it was guaranteed to come up, and that they'll pull you away and change your priorities. And so that's a big thing. But I will say this, last thing I would say, because I know we have a lot of questions to get through, is, but also challenge yourself. Because there are some people who may be with a non-Adventist, but where am I at? Because there's some Adventists that have the same values as a non-Adventist. There's some Adventists that their standard, their values is the same for non-Adventists. So it almost doesn't make a difference. But if you're genuine about being with God, if you're genuine about having the peace that God can give you and the comfort that comes from God, you've really got to be picky in terms of what you allow around yourself, because they're going to rub off on you. Without a doubt, they are going to rub off on you. It's not a matter of if, it's just when they start to rub off on you. And so there are things that will rub off on you. Your values will be affected. Your community, it might affect the people that you're around. So these are things you need to consider. And there are some situations where the person becomes Adventist, right? But it's really hard to change someone. It's hard to even change yourself, So I think it's important to take a good look at it and ask yourself, what am I getting out of this? Where are we going with this relationship? What is the goal of this relationship? If you just feel good, and we all like to feel good, that's a bad answer, because I can guarantee you that whole feel good thing doesn't last forever. So that's something to consider. What's my why in this relationship? And if you can't answer that, I think whether the person's Adventist or not Adventist, you need to step back and say, okay, maybe let me think about it. Why am I just in this to feel good for now? Because if not, I feel, talk to any woman, talk to anybody. I can't make this stuff up. They will tell you that whole feel good when you're young and I'm shilling him down. Listen, when it's time to pay bills, when it's time to deal with real life, you know, and then you don't know what their family's into, and you know we're Haitian. There's some people in our culture that's into that stuff. And you know what I mean by that stuff. And so if they're non-Adventists and then they're bringing their family around you and their family members don't like you and their families are trying to do stuff, I mean, it's messy. And when you marry someone, or when you eventually get with someone, you bring their whole family, their DNA, all the diffo, all the everything. You bring all of that into your life as well.
Yes.
You bring in all that. We're at my parents' house right now. I know it's supposed to be quick, but as you talk,
y'all take a long time on this question.
Yeah.
Yeah, because as you talk, you know, more things come in your head. We're at my parents' house, right, in upstate New York. We're in Brooklyn. There was a few weekends when Myriam's parents came to visit us, and it's so refreshing when on a Sabbath her parents come to visit us in Brooklyn, and we're not like her dad's like, I'm got his CNN from got his side, about the politics with Trump, Biden, blah, blah, blah. Like everyone's on the same page. There's no arguing. Her mom want to do we prayed on Friday night. We did like an Axel Niggas. Imagine if I wasn't at Venice. I'm like, yo, your mother's coming again. Like, what she want to pray on a Friday night for? I'm trying to watch the game.
Right.
I hate when and then when your mom comes, she don't never make no grill. Right. She don't make no crab, no cribbies, no lobster. Come on, man. There's so much things that are gonna catch up. I'm telling you.
Yeah, it's the little thing.
Yeah, and then you're gonna be like, I can't, and we can't do nothing. And what are we gonna do Saturday? I'm gonna hang out with the boys. I'm gonna hang out with my friends, and it causes distraction. When we come to each other's family. Oh my, it's amazing. Like there's no, you know, we don't have to explain. Everyone's on this. You avoid so much headache and stress and things that you're not even thinking about that are gonna come when you get with somebody. When you get with somebody, you enter their world and they enter your world, right? I will throw this in too. There are some people who are Adventists, but their family's not Adventist, but they're still a good person. You don't have to hold that against them. Like my parents, my mom's side is Adventist. My dad's side is not Adventist, but he's still a good guy, right? I know from Myriam's side to her mom's side is mostly Adventist too, but her dad's side, they're not Adventist. So it doesn't mean that bad person, but at least the dad's side know. Like when we go to her dad's side, they know that he's a serious Adventist. When there's a get together, we have our food. Like they don't put crab in the dewey jonjo or shrimp in the dewey jonjo. They know what we eat and they respect the culture.
Yeah.
All that stuff, your lifestyle is impacted by who you get with. Believe me, it will impact you if you're going to be in a relationship and get married to the person eventually. And if you don't plan on being with, let me tell you this, and let's keep it a buck. Let's keep it real. If you don't plan on marrying the person and they're your boyfriend, what's going to keep them around? Sex. That's how guys are. So for a fact, that's what they want. I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, well, yeah. No, that's what a man wants. Every man on the planet, that is his love language to an extent. Not to an extent. That is one of his main love languages. So what are you getting out of it? He knows what he's getting out of it.
Right.
All right.
I'm gonna interrupt y'all just because I'm supposed to be the moderator and I want to make sure we get to all the questions. Someone has a question?
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
Right. They was like, basically, like you gotta have a why. So I wanted to ask them like, what was their why to like getting married and all that?
That's a good question.
How should we do this? Should you guys enter that now or should I don't know?
We can do it now. We can do a quick response and then we can go to the next.
Also keep in mind that some of the questions kind of tie into that.
Yeah. So we might be knocking out another question with this.
Yeah.
That's a great question. Our why, when we got together, I was in Philly. I was in my last year at Temple University, and I made a decision to help the Haitian community. So I went to North Philly Church for a while because it was right near the campus, and I was active in ministries on campus. But I realized that I wanted to give back now to my community. And so I went to the Haitian church. I went to Shekinah. And I was all going to Shekinah. And I was helping the Pathfinder Club. I think Darnell had just come back from Mansfield, I think, at school. Yeah, Darnell just came out from Mansfield. Darnell was working with the youth. Nobody was doing Pathfinders at the time. I said, I'd help. And I reached out to some other young adult Haitians that were at North Philly Church that had left the Haitian churches. I said, would you guys want to help? None of them really helped. The only one that was really around at the time that I saw for Pathfinders would have been Myriam. So we became really close. And the why was, as we got to get to know each other, it was like, whoa, I love ministry. And I saw, wow, she's really willing to come and help with ministry. And because she, Leo! I see I
snuck up
my
on you.
brother.
I was like, he looks familiar.
I see my brother on here. Yeah, I would say that was it. Just our why was we both had an interest in serving God. And to this day, I mean, here we're by God's grace, by God gets all the good. Here we're able to serve God together. So our why was, how can we be with someone that I can love, but also to an extent loves the same God that I love and wants to serve the same God.
So I don't know if you were there this morning, Kevin, but this also ties into the purpose conversation. It's like when you're getting with someone, are those goals, those purposes aligned? And we found that in ministry.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that answered my question.
Okay, great.
All right.
Thank you.
Perfect. Let's move on to the next one. It looks like it already moved.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Okay.
The next question says, do you guys want to answer this a little bit later, or I've just put them in order, but it's up to you guys.
That's fine.
Doesn't matter.
We'll go with that order.
Okay. So the second question says, how do you maintain a happy marriage?
The quick answer is by focusing on making each other happy. So there is this thing called the 5 love languages, where everybody falls under one or multiple different languages. There's physical touch, quality time, gifts, words of affirmation,
service,
acts of service. Those are the 5 main love language. And when you assess yourself or your significant other or your friends too, based on their behaviors and the things that they like, you can identify which love language you fall under. And in marriage and relationships, it's very important to have that knowledge, because once you identify what your love language is, you understand how somebody can love you and make you and satisfy you and make you feel full. And on the flip side, understanding that about your partner helps you understand how to love them in a way that will fulfill them. So if my love language is acts of service, but you're loving me as if my love language is gifts, you might feel like you're doing a great job making me happy because you're showering me with gifts, but I don't feel full or fulfilled unless I'm receiving love through acts of service. So that is very important. And what makes it successful all around is if when each other are focusing on making one another happy. So I'm not focusing on myself, I'm focusing on making Jonathan happy. And on his side, he's not focusing on himself, but he's focusing on making me happy. So it's like a full circle. We're satisfying each other in the ways that matter the most to us.
Yeah, I fully agree with what Myriam said. And I would say, yeah, love language is big. I have a cousin, she was married to her husband for about, they were married for at least 10 years. And then when her kids got into high school, they had separated, they had got a divorce. And when she told her kids that she was getting a divorce, they were shocked. They were like, you and Papi are getting a divorce? We've never seen you guys argue once. We've never seen, some Haitian households, the parents will argue. They'll argue and they'll be like, it's loud and it's back and forth. It was a house where there was no arguing. So the kids were confused, how are you guys getting divorced? Well, we've never seen you guys even get into an open disagreement. And so my cousin said to me, she goes, you know what? She says, one of the biggest issues was love language. She said, she goes, you know, my husband felt that I wasn't giving him attention. She felt that I wasn't paying attention to him enough. She felt that I wasn't, you know, he felt I wasn't looking at him enough or like giving him attention. But her husband's very reserved. And so, but she was like, we would be in the room and he would be watching TV and I'd be doing my thing. And she goes, I would be like in the best place. I love when we're in the same room. He's watching TV and maybe I'm doing my work on my laptop. And I thought it was great, but I wasn't really communicating with him. I wasn't really, I guess, paying attention to him the way he wanted. And she was like, but he, you know, I didn't know that way. She was like, I was happy and didn't know he wasn't happy. But she goes, but he never communicated that to me. He never said, well, you know, if we're going to be in the same room, let's talk. Don't just be on your computer the whole time and you don't, and you're not, and you're ignoring me. And so they, like, she looked at it like this is crazy. I can't believe like we're not going to be together anymore. And what she thought was okay, he thought wasn't okay. And so communication is big as well. If you want a happy marriage, you have to be willing to communicate with each other. And don't try to like don't think the person's going to read your mind. Like if there's something that the person's not addressing or they do that you don't like, or you have to speak up. The person, nobody can read anybody's mind and nobody's perfect. We all come from different households. We come from different upbringings. I had a friend of mine, his wife and him, he got married real young. Like he was 21 and I think his wife was 19. And he told me their first all-out argument. I said, what happened? He said, our first all-out argument, we argued about the dishes. He said, we were screaming and cussing each other out, he said. And he said, he's African-American. His wife, she's born here, but she's Jamaican-American. And so like they were so broke when they got married. They were so broke, so young and broke. They didn't have money to even go buy dishwashing soap. So he's like, oh, no problem. I'll take some of the soap in the bathroom and we'll use the bathroom soap or a body wash so you to wash the dishes. His wife, now she's Caribbean. She's like, oof, you crazy? Like, she's like, take the little bit of soap that's left, put some water in it, shake it, and we'll use that to wash the dishes. Right. Something as simple as the dishes. He said they were cussing at each other, screaming at the top of their lungs, but he said they had no guidance. He had a real tough life. His father was locked up. His mom was addicted to drugs. So his boss wasn't there, his mom wasn't there. His great-grandmother was raising him. So he had to raise himself on his own. And his wife, she came from like a more Caribbean conservative family. So you have to look at your backgrounds too. Communicate with each other. This is the biggest cause for divorce in the US. Believe it or not, is miscommunication. They say out of all the thousands of minutes in a week, they say the average married couple doesn't even spend 20 minutes talking to each other in meaningful conversation. This one's going to work, this one's coming back from work. You have to be intentional with communicating with each other. And the other person has to not just listen, but comprehend what you're saying and understand the person's love language, right? Just like Myriam said.
Amen. All right. That was thorough. Thank you. Next question. Being celibate is hard, especially having a significant other. So what are some tips and advice for you, for young couples to maintain that?
You want me to go?
Oh, you can start.
I think the most logical thing to do is to have some rules. So let me actually start by saying that temptation is going to be there regardless. Mm-hmm. Even though I feel like we grew up in a way that always like shut down temptation. It's like, you're not supposed to feel this way, but we're humans and God created us, like we mentioned this morning, to want to have companionship. And after you get to a certain age, especially with puberty and beyond, you have urges as well. So these things, you can't shut them off. It's just nature. You're going to have temptation no matter what. What you need to do with that temptation is understand and realize that you're weak and you can't trust yourself, which is the reason why you have to have rules. Dating, while dating, some of the things that you can do is try to have group dates. So go on dates with other couples or other friends And even if it's not dates, but do activities in groups. If all of your friends are planning to do something, you can be there with your significant other. You can go out bowling, you can go out to eat. Not right now during COVID, but in regular times, those are things that you can do. And also have like basic rules within your relationship. Like, hey, if we're trying to refrain from having sex, are we gonna travel together? Does that make sense? Because if we're traveling together, more than likely we're in the same room. Who's gonna travel and book 2 different rooms unless you have money like that? You know, like not sleeping under the same roof, maybe not being out late alone by ourselves often. And I mean, naturally, you're gonna have intimacy in a relationship because I'm not married or dating my brother. This is somebody you're attracted to. So you just have to be mindful of limiting those those opportunities for temptation. And it's also good to have maybe more seasoned couples that you trust that can hold you accountable, people that you can refer back to with questions or, you know, some of the more tricky and intimate worries that you might have. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I'll give an example. When I was at Temple, now I was away at school, and college is one of the places where people had the most wild,
Freedom.
like out of control freedom sexually. College is like, that's what college is known for. I remember on my campus, and this was maybe 15 years ago, they had like these quarter machines in the bathrooms with like condoms, like the school, and you can get free condoms from the school. So it's an environment where no one stops you from doing it. And I had a friend of mine who was in a frat, and he was a popular guy, and he wasn't Christian. So he's not even a Christian, but I'm gonna tell you what I got from a conversation with him. So he was good at cutting hair. You know, at the time, I didn't really trust any of the barbers in North Philly at the time. So I would go to my friend, he would cut my hair, and we would chill and talk. And one time, there was a bunch of guys in the room waiting to get their hair cut. You know, when guys get around each other, guys all act like they're super macho. They get all the women, whatever. And he says in front of all the guys, and mind you, these are not Christian guys. These are guys that like sex is what they do all the time. He's like, yo, he wasn't had sex in a while. But he wasn't saying it in a sense as like, oh, I can't get anybody. He was saying, I haven't had sex in a while. And he goes, and I don't even like care about it. It's not even on my mind right now. Mind you, this guy's not a Christian, so he doesn't see anything wrong with not having sex. And then he said, I've been so busy because frat had a lot of programs going on, planning, organizing. He also was an engineering major. So he had a lot of schoolwork and he was busy. And here's a guy who doesn't, in his moral compass, there's nothing wrong with just having casual sex for his moral compass. But he said he still didn't do it because he was busy. And what I remember from that was like, that's so true. You have to give yourself something to do. If you give yourself too much downtime, you know, you have urges. And again, to have urges is not a bad thing. That's normal. You're a human being. But give yourself something to do. Keep yourself busy. Like, find a time, give yourself a schedule, right? I'm exercising at this time. I'm working out, right? Literally give yourself physical things to do. You know, when you exercise and you work out, your mind releases something called endorphins, which make you feel good. And, you know, it's good to do that. It's good for your body. It's good for your mind. It's good for your health. And so give yourself something to do. Like, if you got to go home and do push-ups, I don't know, if you got to do sit-ups or crunches, if you got to jump rope and go in your backyard, give yourself something to do. Keep yourself occupied. Because the temptation comes. But I just remember my friend who was a worldly guy, but he was like, when he's occupied and he's busy and he had things to do, it didn't even come in his mind. I'm like, wow, a non-Christian said that. Christians can benefit from that too. Keep yourself busy. They said when Jesus was on earth, he was tempted as well. They said he always kept himself busy. Keep yourself busy because the urge is there. It's going to be there. You're not a robot. You're not a rock. You're a living human being. And so the temptation is hard for everybody. Be honest with yourself. Don't trust yourself. Oh, we're not going to do this. Do not trust yourself. You are human. The best of humans can fall. So don't put yourself in a place where you'll fall, because you're going to fall. You have to believe, listen, if I'm with this person, there's a high chance that I can fall. We had to create those boundaries, but also, what is something tangible you can do? Keep yourself busy. Start working out. Give yourself something to do. Give yourself some structure to your day to occupy your time. And sometimes you won't even realize that it's like you almost can sort of suppress the temptation a little bit.
Yeah. Adding to keeping yourself busy, other things you can do. I feel like a lot of you guys are school age. You're either high school, college. Join student organizations like that. At that age, that's the best thing to keep you busy, because all these little extracurricular activities, they all require some type of planning from you, like Jonathan's friend. And there's this quote, what is it? An idle mind is the devil's playground.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anything that you can do to not be idle and fill up your time with will help you stay away from temptation.
Yeah. And if you don't have, if you're not on campus, because I know right now people are
Right.
remote,
True.
again,
Pandemic.
give yourself some, maybe you work out in the park near your house. Get out the house and work out in the park near your house. Maybe, I don't know, do something else. Maybe you have, when you're going to read a book, maybe you watch something you can learn about on YouTube, or you have a time when you call a friend, someone that you can also keep accountable, that can help you keep it accountable, like an accountability partner as well. But this is a good question, and everyone faces this, especially after adolescence. Everyone faces it. So don't feel bad if you feel like being celibate is hard. It's hard for every single person.
Mhm.
It's hard. It was hard for us. It's hard for everybody. But it's being honest with yourself, keeping yourself occupied is really, really important.
Yeah, thank you. Amen. There's something I thought about this week, which was like, I was like, wow, Jesus was Jesus is the creator. He came down here as a human, and it says he was tempted in all points, which means he was tempted possibly sexually. I
Yeah.
was like, what? He was tempted by his own creation. I was like, what?
Yeah.
That is mind blowing.
And in his DNA, there were people that were shuffi, like David and Solomon. So Jesus knows how it feels. Yeah. He knows how it feels to be tempted with celibacy. Like, he had to deal with the same thing that you and I dealt with. And he was a carpenter, so he had like a regular job, and he kept himself busy, and he was very helpful to the people in his town. He would always help people, look out for people. He would go out to nature, have some time to himself. Like, he gave himself structure and things to do so that he wouldn't fall.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to be very disciplined, because the devil will send you dreams and send you
Oh,
people.
yeah.
And
Oh, yeah.
he really wants us to fall in that area so badly. Okay, the next question. Is it wrong to keep finances separate when married?
I didn't start that.
It depends on what separate means to you, but I think in everything you have to be honest. It's like, what is the motivation, or what's the motivation behind, that decision? People do things differently. There are couples who have one account for the whole house, and there are couples who have separate accounts. I think that's a personal decision, but the main thing, everybody needs to be open. So if you and your spouse have different account, you should each other have access to that account, or be honest and transparent about some of the transactions that are taking place. And when it comes to finances, once you're married, everything is together. Like, my debt becomes yours, your debt becomes mine. Your good or bad credit, I benefit or don't benefit from. So the important thing is transparency and honesty. As long as you have that, in my opinion, the way you choose to administer certain things is up to you. But it's important to be honest. And they say, I don't know if it's 50%, but a great percentage of the reason for divorce is finances. It's money. You can have huge arguments about money if one person is conservative, the other one isn't. You're making crazy purchases behind each other's back. That's why sometimes it's important to just have it all together. But it's also important to assess, people's transparency.
Yeah, I think to add, even before you get married, you need to watch the person's habits. I think one of the big problems before people get married, they ignore everything. And they're like, "Ah, I'm going to address it one later. I'll address it later. Who they are before you get married is who they're going to be when you get married. And it's
Worse.
going to magnify because
Yep.
you're stuck in a space with them. All right. So we both benefit. We're not big spenders, right? I'm very, the word they would say is frugal, which means I'm very tight. If I'm not in competition with anybody. Like some people are in competition. So lot mun aston bel BMW, they have to get a BMW. So lot mun aston a new car, a new house or whatever, in I don't know, wherever they want to get a new house. Sometimes money, finances is someone's insecurities, right?
Yeah.
Some people have what you call retail therapy, like when they feel down, they need to buy themselves things. And I'm not saying you can't buy yourself anything nice, that's fine. But finances are actually the second largest reason why people get divorced. And I think it depends on who you're with, and you have to know who you're with before you marry someone, before you even propose, before there's even an engagement. These things you have to watch. For us, we have two accounts, right? There's one account that I already had with one bank for a while before I got married. And it's a good bank. So I didn't want to get rid of the bank. But at the time when we were engaged, she was in Philadelphia. So we needed a bank that she could have access to in Philly and I could have access to in New York. So like this Bank of America in Philly and New York. I'm not a fan of Bank of America. PNC is only in Philly, but it's not in New York. So we had to choose something. But we made a decision while we were separate. We would say, okay, the account that I'm using from this bank account will be for bills. You'll manage the account that we're just trying to save for other things, right? Save for other items. But it works for us because we're both not big time spenders. We have our little times when we go on sprees though. Where like me, my thing is Amazon buying books. I love to buy books, but it's not like big money. Like
Yeah.
I can buy a nice book on Amazon for like $2, right?
Right.
So sometimes I may need to buy some new clothes for something. I preach a lot before COVID. I would have to get like new costumes and stuff like that, or shoes, whatever. And she would have to buy. She starts buying her stuff sometimes on Amazon. So just being transparent. But I think it's even if you have different accounts, you should be transparent about how money's being spent. You need to know how the other person's spending money, right? It doesn't mean you can't do anything. Like if she has an emergency, she's out. She shouldn't have to be like, oh my gosh, I can't tell you what I'm going to spend. I mean, can I spend money on this? If you have an emergency, do what you have to do. But the secret is just have an idea of where the money's going. Trace your money, know where it's going. Deal with your tithe and offering, deal with your bills. As long as those things are in order and you have enough money to take care of all those things, all the other things, it's easier. If your wife likes this and it's not going to affect your finances, she could buy it, right? If she knows I like something, it's not going to affect, then I can buy it. But the thing is to be honest about where you're spending money. Because if anybody gets caught off guard on a surprise and it's an emergency and you can't pay your rent or you can't pay something important, you better believe people will have arguments. They will have arguments about money. And you need to be honest with yourself about what it is. Before you even are engaged, you need to look at someone's spending habits.
Amen. Good advice. All right, let's move on to the next one. How did you know he was the one for you?
Okay. Well, I guess that's for me.
Addressed to you.
For me, well, it was a few things I did when we got together, as Jonathan touched on that. We got together through ministry, which was something that purpose-wise was important for me. And I did identify that obviously that was important for him as well. And I don't believe in, people believe in whatever they want, but you know how people be like, oh, love at first sight. I saw her, I knew she was my wife. I saw him, I knew he was my husband. That might be true for some people. That wasn't my story. For me, I became convinced over time. So as we got to spend time together, got to know each other, I saw that there were a lot of our values that were similar. And there were a lot of things that aligned with things that I wanted in a life partner. I'm trying to be just a little bit more detailed, but
you didn't have a dream or something.
I didn't have a dream, but I'll say when we were maybe right before we got engaged or right when we got engaged, our mothers had similar dreams.
Okay.
Very similar dreams.
Mhm.
Oh, and it's also nice to have confirmations from other people around you. You know, this morning I spent a lot of time talking about friends because I feel like it's really overlooked, but your good friends, your good day ones, your family, the people who know you well, they can also have a good judgment on the person that you end up with. Because they'll know, hey, this girl, I grew up with this girl. I know how she is. I understand her love language. I know this girl, maybe especially in the beginning of a relationship, better than this new guy knows her. Does it feel like a match, you know?
Mhm.
So it's good to have those confirmations from the people around you. And it can be sometimes little things. I always wanted somebody that I could be really just fully myself with. I find that sometimes when you meet someone, especially if you weren't already friends with the person, it's not like the first few interactions are not always as smooth or comfortable as with friends. And I really did ask God, I'm like, I don't want somebody that I feel like I have to be like super proper around, or I can't just fully be myself. I like to be laid back and joke around, and I have a little bit of sarcasm to myself also. And I was like, Lord, like, let me have somebody that can handle the real me as I am. And one of the things that I loved very early on with Jonathan, till this day I say it, there's not a time in our relationship that I can remember being uncomfortable with him or feeling like I needed to do anything outside of myself to break the ice or have to act any different or suppress myself. That was a big one for me. So, in order to figure out, one of the elements of figuring out, okay, is this the right person for you? Do you find yourself changing your behavior around them in a negative way? Do you find yourself having to not act like yourself when you're around them? Sometimes it's practical things like that. And then, like I said, over time, I found out we had way more in common. We had some of the same values. We despised some of the same things. So for me, it was a gradual progress.
All right. Jonathan, did you want to add 2 cents or
Um,
short?
yeah, I would just say, also one thing that's connecting with someone who's a person for you, again, obviously God, ask God for signs, because God will drop signs. You just have to be watching and paying attention, because he does. But also, do you connect with the person on a spiritual level? Physically, obviously, are you attracted? There has to be a mutual attraction. But is there mental, that you guys can talk and grow, social, the way you interact, and emotional too? Think about those things as well, because when you do get with someone, the person you're with, these are all things that you're going to have to deal with for the rest of your time together.
Amen. All right. Next question. All right. I guess this is coming from a guy, so Jonathan, you can answer this. Do men benefit from marriage the same way that women do in today's time?
Yeah, I would say so. Studies actually show that in America, men that are married live longer than men that are not married. Men that are married live longer because there's now responsibility and accountability, right? A man that's married is a man that has to think more. A man that's married is a man that has to be more considerate, right? A lot of guys, when they're not married, they eat whatever they want to eat. They don't take care of their bodies sometimes. And when you're married, you start to think about someone else beside yourself. It forces you to grow. It forces you to slow your pace down a little bit. Being married is a big benefit to a man. It's a big benefit because now you're thinking about a lot of things. There's so many benefits, even from like a government perspective, like with taxes and stuff like that. Like when you're fighting taxes, there are so many advantages, and it's two minds, right? Two minds together, right? You can benefit from seeing your wife's perspective. You can benefit from her help. She's able to contribute to your overall growth. She's able to contribute to your overall understanding as well. So men who are married, especially if it's with the right person, will always benefit from being married. You'll always benefit from being married in so many ways. Doesn't mean every day is a walk in the park, no, but there are a lot of positives. There are a lot of positives to it as you grow, have another perspective, has another voice, have another ear. You have someone who you can confide in, someone who has your back, someone who supports you, somebody who won't quit on you, somebody who is, people come and go, but they're there for you. So it's a beautiful thing. Men do benefit from marriage in the same way women can benefit from marriage.
All right, that's good to hear. I was wondering if anyone on the line wanted to put their 2 cents. I'm not gonna make anybody stand up, but no. My cousin? No, okay. It's okay if he doesn't want to.
So
Okay. Go ahead, Ruben.
when I read this question, I can't help but think that it's being asked from a worldly standpoint. Because I often hear when men ask this question, like, oh, if we get divorced, the woman gets everything, there's always double standards and all that, but we have to understand that. And this is why all the questions that are being asked, this is why they're all connected. It's because the goal for everyone is to, have that relationship with Jesus Christ, so that everyone can all be on the same page in their relationships. So you won't have to worry about marriage being something that's going to be a detriment to you. Yeah. So I would say, if you're thinking about it from a worldly standpoint, then maybe, probably, but if both you and your spouse are in a very godly relationship, then it can be the best thing that ever happened to you.
Yeah.
I'm single, but
No, that's true though. No, it's true. From a worldly perspective, a person might feel like they're in prison when they get married, from a worldly perspective. I'm glad you brought that up, because they want to sleep around with whoever they want to sleep around with. They want to come in and go as they want to go. They don't want to be committed to one person. But those same people, it's a lot of stress. They miss out on a lot of things that can really help them. But again, it's got to be a healthy relationship, because if you're with the wrong person and it's toxic, you're just not going to benefit from it.
Yeah.
That's why, again, you're right, these questions do connect. But you're right. From a worldly perspective, someone would see it that way. But the studies show, even from the world, men that are married live longer than men that are not married. And that's not by chance. It's when you're responsible to someone else and they're responsible to you, you make better decisions. You think things out more. You become more considerate. You do things that help make your life better, healthier, and it contributes to you actually living longer. And studies show that from neutral studies.
Yeah, I would imagine you stay out of trouble too,
Oh, yeah.
Going all these women throwing themselves.
And if I could add one more thing, actually, I was going to say also from just from a financial standpoint, not necessarily do men benefit or do women benefit, but the couple itself benefits from a financial standpoint. Because when you're single, it's one income, but when you become in a relationship now, it's two incomes coming in the house if both of you guys work, right? So and even if you guys are not working, even if one person is working now, you have someone to help you with whatever you're doing, right? So it's just more power. Like now you guys could become a power couple, right? Two finances, two ideas, I think as was already mentioned, coming together to now achieve one goal. So before it was one person pushing that one goal, but now it's two people coming together to achieve a goal. And I do believe more success will definitely come from that.
Definitely.
Yay.
Well said.
Yep, well said.
If only we could see his face, but it's okay. He's going to say too much. All right, next question. Is there evidence against signing prenups?
I don't believe that there's any Bible evidence with signing prenups. For me, I would say that I think it's all about the intentions behind it. I feel like when we hear the word prenup, generally we assume, oh, well, you're planning for divorce because you're already signing a prenup to ensure what will be protected if you get a divorce. So for me, I really think it's the intentions behind it. And you can't really judge people's decisions on that. I think for regular people like myself and Jonathan, there's probably useless. But when I think about celebrities, big celebrities that, like if I'm thinking about Tia and Tamara, the twins, these girls have been making money and I've had their names, you know, as an item since they were little kids. And depending on the world that you live in, like we live in a regular, normal world, but like in the world of celebrities and superstardom, it's hard to assess people's intentions. A prenup a lot of times is used to just protect yourself. How do I know that this person genuinely loves me and they don't want to just be with me because of my fame? And yeah, it's true, you can take your time and assess the person, but the truth is that humans were really good at lying. You know, we're good at deceiving people as well. If you can get a chance of being with someone who has a lot of money and you'll be, you know, financially stable until you die, you'll be the best actor in the world to show this person that, oh, you genuinely love them. So I do feel like sometimes it's a protection just for yourself. Or it's also, on the flip side, it can also be respecting. So the Tia and Tamara that I mentioned, I remember hearing Tamara, one of the twins, saying that she did sign a prenup because she wanted to protect what she had, but she also wanted to respect her husband because he comes from money as well. And it's like family businesses that they have, and kind of give him that proof that, hey, I'm not with you for your money. So God forbid, if anything happened between us, I wouldn't want to rob you of everything you've worked for. So to answer that question, I think it's really about the intentions behind signing those papers.
Yeah, I'd say, you know, those people, those are like one in a million people. Those are 1 in a million cases. So those are those cases, you know, that works for them. Ideally, though, you know, the idea is that you want to, for example, in the Bible, they had divorce in the Old Testament, but people started to divorce for every small reason. Mm-hmm. And so it was like, oh, I'm not happy. Okay, let's get a divorce, which doesn't make, you have to learn to work things out, right? You have to learn to work things out. You have to work on things. Marriage, a good friend of mine always says, marriage is a marathon. It's not a sprint. You know, in today's society, it's about who has the nicest pictures on Instagram or Facebook, or that's not really what it's a marathon. And so in the Bible, for sure, there was a while where even the chosen people, these Israelites in the Old Testament, everything they would get a divorce. So then Jesus in the New Testament had to be clear. He said, listen, based off what the Bible says, he said, if the person does not die and it's not a case of infidelity, you have to work on that thing, right? Now, don't get me wrong. There could be situations where the person can be physically abusive and your life is in danger. I don't think God would want you to stay there and get killed. No, with that, no, we're not for that. But in a general example, what Jesus gives is, if the person has not passed, you're not a widow, or there wasn't a case of infidelity, you have to learn to work things out. And it's a reflection of your relationship with God. Sometimes you're static in your relationship with God. It's not on him, it's on us. Or sometimes he's quiet for a season, but he wants you to learn in that season. But the experience is what's important, growing together, learning together. And so why I can see Christians having an issue with this, it would be like, oh, this might not work out. Well, if it might not work out, then don't get with the person, right? But again, life is unpredictable sometimes. You never know what could happen to somebody. But I do think, like Myriam said, in this situation, that was a good example with the celebrities, where they come from old money and generations, and it can be messy. So and they're still together. They have a great marriage, they're together. But for them, it wasn't in terms of that. It was more to protect their assets and their families' things. But again, that's one in a million. Us regular commoners, right. Us common people, I wouldn't say there's a need to do it. And I would say I'm glad that Jesus said what he says, because people just quit. Oh, I'm bored. I want to move on. Bored. Have you worked on the marriage? And in marriage, nobody does the work for you. You have to do the work. You have to do the work. Just like your relationship with God. I can't have a relationship with God for you. You're the one who has to talk to God for yourself. You're the one who has to communicate with God for yourself. What does me communicating with God have to do with you? You have to do it for yourself. And in marriage, you have to open your mouth. You have to communicate. You have to be willing to listen and to learn. So again, I wouldn't judge anyone, especially in that scenario that Myriam brought. Makes sense. But at the same time, it's important why in general most Christians are against this is because people would, if they could, it's an easy way out. And what are you learning in that? You're not learning anything. It doesn't bring you closer to God. It doesn't, unless some people are in really tough situations. But in general, I would say that we have to learn it's work. Marriage is work. If anyone said it's not work, then they'd be lying. You have to work at it and be intentional. So that question's a loaded question. We can go on forever. I don't want to add more time to take more time. But I would say, ideally, this question is really evidence that you must take your time and let God lead when it comes to marrying somebody. I know that's not the question per se, but that's at the root. Even maybe the person might not be thinking about it, but and pretty much the question say, what happens when you get a divorce? Again, the Bible's not against it, but the Bible is very specific of what it is to cause a divorce. Now, because someone can cheat on you, because someone can die, I wouldn't be mad at someone for doing this either, to be honest with you.
Okay. All right. Next question. Is it hard to live with each other under one roof?
I think it depends on the person, and it depends on who you end up with. For us, it was exciting because you're thinking, we've only lived together after we got married. So just the whole process of nesting and leading up to even the wedding, looking for an apartment, looking for what type of neighborhoods you want to live in. Are you going to get a 1-bedroom, a 2-bedroom? Just thinking about accommodating your space. For us, well, looking for an apartment in New York City was rough. Thank God Jonathan took the brunt of it. But once we got that out of the way, just starting to think about, how we're going to decorate this. So in the beginning, it already started with excitement. And then moving in, it's like you get married and your whole life sort of changes because now it's a different lifestyle. Up until that point, if you weren't living on your own, you've only lived with family, right? Friends, siblings, cousins, possibly. But it wasn't anybody that was really sharing everything about your space. So I feel like if you've gotten in a marriage where you're compatible, you both complement each other well in terms of your temperament, it's not hard, it's fun. But I have to say, you get used to each other, you get settled into your space, into your habits, and you start learning about each other and about yourself, certain things that you may not like or certain things that you like. For example, I like to have my space every now and then, but thankfully Jonathan likes to have his space every now and then as well. So we're able to read off of each other and give each other that peace when necessary. So for me, it was exciting, but we do have different experiences because I moved in with a husband straight from leaving my parents' house. I've never lived on my own. So I've lived with cousins, family members. I've never lived on my own. Whereas Jonathan comes from having a lot of years of independence and then sharing space with me. So he can expand on that.
Yeah, it was different because I already lived on my own for many years. I had gone away to school. I lived in Philadelphia. I lived in Boston. I was used to being totally on my own. But when Myriam moved in, it was great. But she made a good point. Temperament is big. We both are not, what's the word I would say? Nupa sumun. So like, she's not sumun, I'm not sumun. So it works because there's times where, of course, there's times where you are sumun on each other. Like, oh, we're going to sit down and watch something together.
Or your husband is going to annoy you.
Yeah. But in general, a big thing is we do like our space too, right? A typical day for us looks like this, right? She goes to work before me. She wakes up earlier before me. She leaves because her job is in downtown Brooklyn. And we live far from downtown Brooklyn. excuse me, my job is down the street from where we live. I walk to work. It's a 7-minute walk to work. So I get up after her, and then I leave after her, and I get back home before her. I get back home usually about maybe before 3:30. She gets home sometimes like 6:30, right? When she gets home, she had a long day. She had a long drive back home from work. She'll usually want to talk about her day at work. She might want to get a few things off her chest. I would say in general, she comes home, she gets a few things off her chest about what happened at work or traffic or whatever. And then she, relax. She'll go to the room. She might be on her phone. She might relax. I find that she likes low energy stuff after work. She doesn't want to have to do too much work and thinking. I think work is a lot, so she wants to relax. So if I'm someone that's on her all the time after work, it's going to annoy her. I'm the same way when I come back home from work too. The good thing is I have 3 hours to myself before she gets back home. So I relax, I sit down, I play music. Sometimes I go to the park and I'll play basketball with the guys in the neighborhood. Sometimes I'll go exercise. So for us, it works. But if you have someone that's always on you and that's their style and that's not your style, you might be annoyed at home. So for us, we're fine. Both of our personalities work well. We're laid back in our temperament. So for us, it's fine. But I will say this, you have to know how the person grew up in their house as well too. Mm-hmm. My house is a little more loud. Myriam's house is a little more calm. Like her house is a little more calm. My house is a little more louder. So, we're both Haitian, but not everything's the same about her house versus my house. So you have to adjust to their style versus your style. Sometimes, you're figuring some things out, but, overall, it's pretty good. I would say for us, it's been fun, but personality helps. Understanding the other person's personality, respecting their personality, and knowing when to step up and when to step off.
Mm-hmm. I'd add to, maybe in the case that you don't have the similar temperament, sometimes I could be hyped, Jonathan is not, or vice versa. Good example is when we first got married, I didn't find a job for a long time. So I was home, had my day to myself. So by the time Jonathan came home from work, I was ready to talk. Like talk about everything under the sun and everything. And when we first got married, I realized that I'd be so hyped, but he'd come home and not be on the same level of energy. And I'm like, oh, what's his problem? And he would just be like putting his back down, just taking his time, like he'll sit on the chair. But I felt like at some point I was like, am I talking to myself? But then we communicated and we talked about it. And he was like, listen, you had the whole day to just do what you had to do. I ran my errands, but then I was at home and I wasn't using the same type of energy that you have to use on a regular 9 to 5. But he's like, when I come home, I need to de-stress. So if you could just hold your thoughts for like an extra hour and then you can share your day with me. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. So it's about reading each other and just over time, you get to understand each other's routine. So when you first get together, of course, you got to iron out these kinks.
One last thing. I'm so sorry. I had to say this and then we can go to the next question. Also know the person's pet peeves, right? You see me, I'm son garçon, moi-même, m'kon mette chaussettes moi n'importe côté sometimes. I'm in the house. I know she doesn't like that. And so I said, you know what? If you don't want an apartment, just don't put your socks there. Like sometimes men do things that, women want to clean the house a certain way. You can make your life easier if you do those things. Like be willing to help around the house. That gives you more time to enjoy each other too. Like if you make your wife do all the cleaning and all the cooking and everything all the time, and then you want other favors from her, well, that doesn't make any sense. She's not going to have time for you because she's tired.
Or energy, yes.
Yeah, so you have to and during the summer, I'm off because I'm a teacher.
Right.
So in the summer, I would try to do the dishes more. It doesn't make sense for her to go to work and come back and maybe she cooked the food in the morning and to see the dishes are still full in the sink, right? She should come home and I can do the dishes so she doesn't worry about it, right? Clean up after yourself. Keep the house. One big thing is if you keep the house clean and you make your wife complain, you have a good chance of having more positive time around each other.
Yeah.
And me too, I don't like dirty houses myself.
Right.
I don't like that. Only thing my problem de toujours like it shows n'importe côté. And I said, I see if I do that, she's gonna talk. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna stop doing that.
Yep.
And then so that's a big thing I would say. Like, you have to split the duties. Like, don't make one person do all the work in the house. If you guys split the work, okay, I clean this, you clean that, I'll do the tub, you do the kitchen, whatever. You both have more time, you have more energy, and it puts you in a better mood.
Yeah.
That's my only extra I had to add.
And then with like the chores part, sacrifice doing the things that the other person just really despise doing. Like, I don't like scrubbing the tub. I can do it, but if I hate doing it more than Jonathan, Jonathan will just take it. He doesn't like mopping. I don't mind it. So I'll take that. Sometimes it's that easy.
I love that. I love those tips. They're so practical, but they're so helpful. Thank you.
Can I just add something?
Mhm.
So there was one time I was visiting a family, my uncle in another country. I was visiting, and I can sense the lack of communication. It was so awkward. And I feel like, and they've been married for years, and I can sense the wife was tired. She was tired of doing all the cooking, all the cleaning. She was tired of the one keeping, like, she was just tired. And she like bent it to me, and I didn't even know this lady like that. And it was just like, you know, and it's awkward. Like, you can't communicate that with your husband, or maybe she did and he wasn't listening. And so I think, you know, living under one roof, don't think that the way you start is the way you'll be in the middle of your marriage, the way you'll be towards the end of your marriage. People grow, people change. You know, what you used to do in your 20s, you know, bending down, cooking, cleaning, doing all these things, you know, cooking a different meal every day. You can't do that when you're 60, you know? So, you know, you evolve, you change. And so I think it's important that, yeah, you're living under the same roof, but learn how to, like you guys mentioned, learn how to read each other and learn social cues so that you can see what your spouse is trying to tell you, but not opening their mouth to say, even though you're not a mind reader. But, you know, so reading social cues, because you'll know your spouse the best. Learning how to understand what that person wants and needs is important to maintain that relationship through years and years. So I just wanted to mention that.
And just piggyback, I know I can say that was my last for the question, but that made me think. In the church, we need to start talking to our boys, because what happens in the Haitian culture is faut qu'on fait manger, faut qu'on nettoyer, faut qu'on this. And we have these boys that can't even wash their own clothes. They don't know how to do laundry. They don't know how to do nothing. And so you have a bunch of these boys who are not men. Stop spoiling your boys. You see me in my house, my mom li pa got him.
Yeah.
I benefited. My dad, he grew up, you know, he didn't have a dad, and his mom died when he was young. His mom would sell clothes in Haiti. So she would leave the ingredients in the house with him and his siblings. So my dad learned how to cook since Haiti. So when I grew up, my dad knows how to take care of our house too, and my mom, both of them. So my dad, papa me konn fè manger, maman me konn fè manger. Papa me konn nettoyer, maman me konn nettoyer. They know how to keep the house clean. So that was good for me as a boy. I grew up learning. Just because I'm a boy doesn't mean from just sit down and do nothing.
Right.
I don't understand. Every time there's a program, they say, girls, fi faut qu'on fait ça, fi faut qu'on fait this, fi yo pas jump à la garçon. They let the guys get away with
spoil them.
What's going on? And so now there's no, and so then the girl gets older and they say, "Miss me bagay garçon." Whose fault is that? It's our fault. We let the boys do whatever they want for all these years. We only told the girls, this is how you're going to keep a man. Teach him how to be a good man as well. You have to know how to clean and help out and do things on your own too. And then here's the thing. The girls are going to college. They're going to school. They're going to higher education. How can they do both and then have to do all that stuff in the house. Something's gonna take a hit. Sometimes I see Miriam's tired from work. I'm not gonna go, oh, you gotta cook something. I don't care if you had a long. No, I say, you know what? Tonight we'll order something. Don't worry about cooking. I know you're tired. And it makes sense to make the person do every single thing in the world. I don't know. It's something so simple, but in the Haitian community, we've struggled. We let our boys do whatever they want. So we have all these amazing women who are responsible and talented, and a bunch of boys that don't know how to have any responsibility in the house. We can talk to our boys now too. And so if a man can help in the house, he'll make life better for his wife and himself, and you can have more good times together. I'm done. I said I can't stop, but that I had to add that in there. You can go to the next one.
And you know what's interesting about that, John, just referring back to that same uncle, because his wife, she had a family member who passed away while I was there. So she had to leave and go to attend to the funeral. You know, my uncle, because my uncle left his home at a young age. He knew how to cook. He knew how to clean. I was so shocked. He knew how to cook. He knew how to take care of himself, but yet he took advantage. And I just being there just for like that week, he took advantage of all the things that his wife offered. But instead of stepping in, you know, during the marriage, like during those years, stepping in, helping out, he just, you know, okay, yeah, my wife can do it. And so, you know, you can sense the tension. It was so bad. You can sense the tension, and they've been married for years. But you know, I agree with you, Jonathan. We gotta teach our men, our boys, to take responsibility. And I think what's happening now, a lot of young women, we are realizing we're not going to accept that. Like, I'm not your maid. I'm not your mom. So we're not, even that song, like, y'all know that song that Cardi B got out. I don't cook, I don't clean, but let me tell you how I got this ring. Like, a lot, you know, these kids, they listen to this song. So, you know, a lot of women, they're not accepting, you know, little boys. We don't want to be with children. We want to be with men who are responsible and be able to take care of themselves. So
yeah, I think this question steered a lot of discussion, which is good. I mean, I'm not married, but I really appreciate, you know, the perspective you guys give, especially from Jonathan as a man. Like, I work every day and I come home like almost at 6 o'clock. Like, I mean, even though I'm the woman, but like, I'm a human. Like, after work, not only are you mentally drained, but you're physically drained. And then that expectation, that's why it's a partnership. It's not just me. It's in true love serves. Like, if you really, really love your wife, at the end of the day, like, you want to serve her. So I think Haitians, I don't want to generalize, but like, the Haitian mentality is like, true love serves, like Jesus served. And that example is Christ-like. So
one last thing about this question, and then really swipe. And this is because of the second comment Darnell made. Sometimes also you have to speak up, because I remember my mom gave me that advice too growing up. You'll start off your marriage, it's fresh, it's exciting, you've never had anything like this before, and you just want to be like the perfect wife. Cook, clean, the house is, you know, shining, but that gets old and you're gonna get tired. And if you made a practice of making this a thing, it's just maybe like what's happening with your family member. Maybe she just fell into it for so long, it was just like, I can't even say that I'm tired. That's just my lifestyle now. So for us also, like I said, when we first got married, I wasn't working, so I was doing most of the cooking and cleaning. But once I started working, that changed. The cooking couldn't be as often as before, and the chores, everything had to be separated. But a conversation happened about these things needing to change, so we got to keep that in mind. Okay, next question.
All right, I think this one you guys kind of covered, so maybe we don't have to spend that much time on it. Why do people think that they need to have sex and relationship in order to call it a real relationship? What if that's the mentality of your significant other?
I can answer real quick. Oh, go ahead.
Okay, fine, I'll go ahead.
Well, okay, yeah, that definitely is a mentality thing because you do not have to be sexually active to be in a relationship. It is a mentality thing, but it also goes back to your values. If this person has that mentality, but you don't, then the relationship is not going to work essentially, unless you're willing to compromise or unless this person is going to live in misery and not get what they want. So this might actually be a deal breaker. After you sit down, there can be a conversation where you sit down and fully explain what your values are, what goal you're trying to accomplish when it comes to physicality, and meet, like, see if this person is going to understand. And if they don't, I mean, I don't think it can work out.
And let me speak from a man's perspective. I would say this: every man on earth, one of his love languages or one of his top love languages will be physical touch, which is tied to sex. Period. That's men. Men are a lot more physical and visual. We are built so differently. Not to say that women aren't physical and want these things as well, but men, that's how we know the saying says, women give sex to get love. Men will give love so they can get sex, right? Men are very physical and visual. That's just how it is. But what women need to understand too is that is no indication of evidence of a relationship. I'm going to be transparent and I'm going to be direct, but I'm trying to be appropriate. If women understood how sex works for a man, it doesn't work the same way for a man it works for a woman. I'm going to say it in a nice way, in a PG way. What happens is when the act of anything sexual is taking place and a man, during that time, a man, his blood rushes down to his reproductive system, and a man, he's like in a high. He's like in a high doing this activity, these physical activities. Once a man reaches his climax, what happens? It's like his blood rushes back down. And it's like he goes from when he was having the sexual and physical relationship to he will say all these nice things, but once he's done, he's done. It's like all the feelings go away. That's why a girl will say, but I gave him, he wanted it, I gave it to him, and he still's not with me anymore. Never in the history of humanity has sex kept someone in a relationship. It might keep them for a little bit, but trust me, they will get, but it won't be enough after a certain amount of time. If sex was the answer, every time your marriage is bad, just have sex and then your marriage will get better again. I mean, you won't have a divorce. Mm-hmm. For all the divorces in the world, for people that started their relationships with sex, what happened? Couldn't they just go back to sex to fix their relationship? Let's just go back to that and it'll fix all our issues. Sex doesn't fix relationships. It matters in a relationship when you're married in the right context, but you think if that was the case, every couple that ever got a divorce, all they had to do is say, let's go to the bedroom and it's going to fix all our problems in our relationship. You tell me who that works for, what couple that works for. Now, it matters in the relationship, but if you think that's the only thing, you're in trouble. The same person, they'll be like, oh, we're not really in a relationship, or we're not sleeping together. That same person will play you and sleep with somebody else. That same person, I'm a man. Once a man is done doing what he does physically, did you know like all his feelings go if he doesn't really love you? Like he can, everything leading up to the sex is just like, yes, for the man. Once he gets his, that's why guys, they put on their pants and they're ready to go. All right, time to go to sleep. Let me get some knee and go to sleep. I'm speaking from a man's perspective, and every man physically, we're pretty much almost the same. If you think this is in a relationship to call, you have to have a relationship to call it, the person is playing. They're playing you. I'm telling you, they're playing you. Because why don't people just do that to fix their relationships? Think about all those relationships that are dysfunctional. Can't they just go to the bedroom and fix their relationship? Mm-hmm. What does this mean if everything else is off? It means nothing. If everything is off, you won't even want to touch the person. You won't even, the same person you thought looked good before looks ugly to you now. So anyone tell you that that's what makes a relationship, they playing you. It's a way to use you and get something out of you. They need to, for you to feel like, I want to feel like I'm part of this relationship. and he's saying we got to do it. Okay, I'm going to do that. You think that's going to keep him when other people have, when other people are the same thing that you have? He can get what he gets from you from anybody else. That means in a relationship with them too. So the person, and I'm speaking from a man dealing with a woman perspective. Obviously, there could be a woman, it could be reversed, but I'm speaking from a man perspective. How does that keep a man? So that means that everybody else he slept with, he's still in a relationship with them too? No. So whoever said this, when you're married, yes, this is a huge part of your relationship, but it's not everything. Every other things matter. But people will play you off for this. If you love me, I had a friend when I was in college. This guy played her, had a kid with a whole nother girl. She said, I don't know what to do. She said, I gave him everything he asked for. He wanted sex, I gave it to him. He wanted this, anything he wanted to do, I did. And he still played me. She said, what do I do next? Listen, on the way to getting that, God will do anything. They'll manipulate you. Well, how I know you love me, and that doesn't keep people together, period. But it matters in the right context, in the right relationship, in marriage.
Okay. All right. And then, sorry, I got a little sidetracked. I wanted to ask a question though, because I think this might just be mostly for women, but you know how they say the oxytocin, the bonding hormone? Maybe it's just for women. Like when you sleep with someone, like you develop this bond with them. You mentioned that the guys is like done. Is it more for the women, I'm guessing?
You know what? I would say it's more for the women.
Okay.
Sex is more an emotional thing for women. All right. For men, it can be an emotional thing, but men, it's not so much an emotional thing for them in the moment. They need to just love you emotionally in general. If they love you in general, then it can be an emotional thing for them. Here's the thing about men. Men get excited, if you know what I'm talking about, physically. A man's private part, he gets excited like this. Let me tell you how it is. A man could be walking down the street thinking about the basketball game. He could be walking down the street minding his business, thinking about the basketball game, and a beautiful woman walks by, and literally his mind goes from 0 to 100. He goes, I was minding my business thinking about the basketball game, and a beautiful woman walked by, and the man now gets in a sexual mode. That woman that's walking down the street, you think he knows her name? Nope. Do you think he knows who she is? Nope. He has no emotional attachment. But now he has an urge to maybe do something with the woman. And so that's so common for men. Men are so, I can't emphasize it enough. Men and women are like different. We are so different in that sense. And so for a man, it doesn't take much for him to have to get in a sexual mode. It takes very little. He doesn't need to have a conversation with you. He doesn't need to connect with you. He just needs to see that you look attractive and he's ready to go. A woman, no, it's got to have a conversation. There has to be things that lead up to it. There has to be like caressing, and men go 0 to 100. Women go 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. It's more of a process for women, right? So a woman, maybe her husband checks up on her during the day at work. Oh, I miss you. I love you. Or you're beautiful. Her husband might do things, and those things get her emotionally ready to get into the act. But a man doesn't need any of that stuff. So yes, there are bonds. I would say this: a man can be attached to a woman, what she did with him physically, but men move on quick.
So it's just memory.
Just look in Haiti. How many men have like 10 kids with like 11 women? I'm just playing. But they have like mad kids with mad women, and they're not attached to the woman. They don't care. They're looking for the next woman. I know very few. When I hear the Gamun talk about all the Gamun in Haiti, even I'll speak for my parents. Both of my parents' fathers have different kids with different women, and had no problem dropping the last woman to get the next one. It's not the same attachment for men on average. They got to get theirs and they're out. They don't have to be attached.
This question ties in with what you guys are talking about. It came in recently. Are there any sexual acts in marriage that are forbidden, like oral?
It's a good question. I would say people have freedom. They have freedom to do what they want, right? And they should embrace it. It's God who created sex, and he wants people to enjoy it. That's a fact. Like, I know we've been taught to like, oh, this is the worst thing. God creates it. He wants people to enjoy it. But people should be careful with their limits. And the reason why I say that is because if you have zero control and you're doing it all day, every day, you're going to become desensitized to it a little bit. And what happens is you're looking for the next high. And so if what you were doing that was regular wasn't enough, that's when people do risky stuff, and people do stuff that it can get out of control. So there are acts. I feel like if the act denigrates somebody, if the act, if it's denigrating someone, if it's dealing with,
Unhealthy.
yeah, if it's unhealthy,
And cause
if it's
cancer,
dealing with
yeah.
like human waste, and I mean, there's nasty things that people do, which is disgusting. But if it's unhealthy, if it is going to harm you physically, if it's bad for you emotionally, if it's bad for your health, if it makes your mind wander way too far, you should probably stop doing that, or you should not do that. Because that's how couples sort of get into bad craziness. Like, they'll go into all kinds of wild stuff. And again, not to say you have to be cookie cutter. God wants people to have fun and to be creative and explore. God likes all that stuff. But once you see it becomes a danger to where your mind can go in terms of thinking about others now and hurting each other and things that will affect your health, when people think about, for example, homosexuality, people have reasons why they might struggle with it, but the act of it is very unhealthy. You know what I mean? It's just literally bad for your health. And so that's something that people need to keep in mind. If it doesn't affect that in that way, then I think you have some freedom and creativity. But go ahead.
And I think also, as long as the act is like both sides are comfortable with it, then and it's not unhealthy, it's not harmful to your life, I think it's a personal decision. It's between you and the person, because somebody might be down for something but the other person isn't. It makes them uncomfortable. Also, with that, you have to be aware of somebody's sexual past. Yeah, we are promoting, sexual purity, waiting until you get married, but life is not perfect. Things happen. You might fall into temptation before getting married. And sadly, people experience sexual abuse as well. So that also affects their sex life in marriage, because there are things that are triggers. There are things that they might not be comfortable with. So this is also part of communicating. Talk about each other's sexual past, experiences, what makes you comfortable, what makes you uncomfortable, and like your openness to different things.
And ideally, it should be a two-way street where both people are being pleased.
Right.
There was someone, I guess I'll be honest, since the young people are being transparent with their questions. Mm-hmm. There are some people, there was a woman who had 3 kids. And she had gotten divorced because her husband had cheated on her and etc. And he was physically abusive. So she got remarried in her 40s. And she said in her 40s was the first time she actually enjoyed sex. And she had 3 kids.
Wow.
For all these years, she was sleeping with this man, and it was all about him. Mm-hmm. All about him. And she never... In her 40s, she goes, wow, that was the first time I ever reached my, for lack of a better term, climax. She said, first time after she had gotten married. So almost 15 years. Yeah. Almost 15 years she was having sex with her husband, and he was so selfish and so about himself that she didn't even really enjoy it. And I want to throw this in for people in high school. There's a lot of girls in high school who said, I'm going to have sex with my boyfriend. A lot of them don't even enjoy it. They have a boy who's selfish and doesn't know what he's doing. God made it for it to be a two-way street. Each person is being pleased and their needs are being addressed. And if it's all about one person only, that's a red flag. That's a red flag. If it's only about one person, it's a red flag. God wants it to be a two-way street. It's about giving. Even in sex, it's supposed to be selfless and not selfish. So that's something to consider as well. A lot of people, it's just they're in a selfish situation. The person's not thoughtful, the person's not caring, and they don't even know they're not enjoying it. The woman did not know it until she had gotten remarried. She said, Ms. Ami, I didn't even know I wasn't enjoying anything. It was all about the man until she had gotten remarried. So that's something to consider when you think about this stuff. Are both partners, both people being pleased?
All right. There's a question that came in the chat. It says, how do you get rid of a soul tie if you had a relationship, you had sex, and now you're broken up? Just briefly, if you guys could answer that.
That's a real good question. I think one step is you have to be honest. First, you have to be honest and see what it is. You have to look at it and deal with it. First, acknowledging it is big. And if you do acknowledge it, that's the first step. But I think one thing is you have to, it's like you almost have to eradicate everything. You have to detox. Yeah, you have to detox. And so detoxing means trying your best to control your thoughts, trying to fill your thoughts with other things. Some people do need to see a therapist about certain things, but talking to God and I'll give you an example. I always use an example with a cup. When someone, let's say this is empty, right? And you say, let's say the air in here, right, represents soul ties. Someone says, how do you get air out of an empty cup? How do you get air out of an empty bottle? Now, this is not empty fully, but how do you get air out of an empty bottle? And it's a very good question. I don't know. How do I get air out of a bottle? You fill it up. That's it. And so in detoxing, what are you putting in yourself now? Right? So the thing is to try your best to keep that person out of your mind. Again, do healthy things as well to keep yourself busy and occupied. But what do you fill yourself with now? Right? And that's a big part of the detox. Right? There was this guy, Craig Lewis used to do these series, and he had a friend that was struggled with homosexuality. The person said he had to take the TV out of his house. He had to put computer, and they had to put stuff on their computer that would monitor what you go on and stuff like that. And you have to detox. The best thing is to stay away from that person. And you try to fill yourself with thoughts and things that will help occupy your mind and help push those other thoughts out to an extent. It's more deeper than that. It's really not. You could do a series on that question because that's a tough, and that's a very good question. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, because you mentioned series, there's a good preacher who does really well discussing relationships, sexuality, and everything. He's a Christian preacher. I don't know if you guys are open to that, but his name is Michael Todd. I'll put his name in the chat box. He's on YouTube. I think it's Restoration or Transformation Church. Mm-hmm. He's very good at being practical about those issues that a lot of us go through. So, we don't have all the answers, and we know that people have different temptations and different weaknesses, but I found him to be really relevant. So I'll put it in there, and hopefully, listening to his stuff can provide more answers.
Amen. Wow, we could go on, but it looks like time is running out. We might not get to all the questions, but we're going to try to at least
Basti, that's it.
Be done by 6. Okay, next question. You guys can briefly answer this. It says, in movies, couples show true affection and deep love to one another. As Christians, would that be doing too much, being in love with your significant other? I think they mean, would it be doing too much publicly?
Yeah.
Infatuation or public displays.
Okay, so showing affection can be, a real an illustration of actually how you feel, deep love. But there's also, you have to be mindful of, you have to be able to discern between real genuine love and infatuation. Infatuation is just a high and it doesn't last, It's like Jonathan, I think he mentioned that earlier. It's you get married or you get in a relationship, but life is going to go on. you're hype, you know, you planned it, you did the engagement party, you did the wedding, the honeymoon, and like, oh my gosh, I'm on a high. But life is gonna go on. Like, you still have to go to work, you still have bills to pay. Life happened, 2020 happens, pandemic happens, sickness happens, death happens, and you're not always gonna have butterflies in your stomach and be on cloud nine. That's the difference between, in fact, you know, genuine love and infatuation. In terms of like public displays of affections, PDAs, everybody's different. Some people are a little bit more touchy-feely, so they like holding hands and, you know, hugging and all, you know, all that. I believe that as Christians, there is a standard for, I guess, modesty, or just the way you portray yourself. There are things that should only happen in private, you know, like the making out in public. And also remember that what you see in movies is not always reality. You're going to the movies and sitting through a 2-hour movie, there's not enough time to depict what real life and all the situations can be in a real life situation. But there are things like, hey, holding hands. If I'm walking down the street with Jonathan, we're on a date, or, you know, we're just relaxing, I'm not walking down the street with my brother. If I'm holding my husband's hand, that is a small display of affection that is pretty common and acceptable, I feel.
Yeah, I agree with everything she said. A movie is 2 hours and people get paid money to act that way.
Right.
And so that's not an actual reflection of what this stuff is, right? There's nothing wrong with holding hands and things like that, but affection is good, especially it's good to show affection, but it doesn't need to be publicly. But inside the house, yeah, you're home together, showing affection is important, and knowing what they like as affection, right? And there are little things, right? It's not just like sometimes it is a husband, you can give your wife a massage. A wife can do something that's for her husband as well too, right? You know, so it doesn't have, you know, movies don't give you the full gist. They're paying someone who's taking many takes to do that scene. They don't even love each other in real life. So I wouldn't let movies be our guide, because none of those things are real, and they're actors and actresses who are on screen for like 1.5 to 2 hours. So, but public display of affection, yes, not everything belongs to the public.
Yeah, and I think it can serve as a, what is it, like stimulant, like just be cautious, be mindful of, you know, like be your brother's keeper. Because humans, we're naturally, like, God made us sexual. If you see somebody making out, like it can stimulate like the drive with someone else, and that's not fair. Then you make the person sin. Like, so I think, I mean, there are some there's innocent, but then there's taking it to another level, I think.
Be mindful of how you're making people feel around you too. If I'm in an outing with friends, I'm out with my friends. I'm not on a date with my significant other. Like, what if there's single friends there? You don't know what people are struggling with. Like, don't make people feel like a third or fourth wheel, or, you know, it's unnecessary.
Yeah. Remember us, third wheels. Okay, next. Is it wrong for a wife to want some independence from her husband?
No, it's not. As I mentioned earlier this morning, what makes a human complete is a mixture of all their relationships. You have to have that balance. I'm married, I'm one with my husband. That is the most important relationship in my life, and that's the one I'm investing the most in. But I'm still somebody's daughter, I'm somebody's sister, I'm somebody's best friend, I'm somebody's cousin. And all these relationships need nurturing. I can't just make my life about my husband, because there's other people too who care and love me, who care about me and love me. Not just that, as you get older, things get stale also. It's like every time you get in a new relationship, it's always exciting and you only want to talk to this person all the time. But then you get used to them and it's like, okay, I'm used to this. Now what's next? You want to measure yourself and allow space for growth in every area. That's not to say like, oh, I'm leaving my husband every other day so I can have my independence. You are in a marriage and you got married for a reason. You definitely need to focus on that. But also these behaviors, you can start practicing them before marriage. I've experienced the girlfriends that whenever they get in a relationship, they totally disappear. When they're in a relationship, don't text them, don't call them, you're not gonna find them. They're all about their men. And that's problematic, because if you behave that way in relationships, more than likely when you get married, that's what's gonna happen. And then God forbids, like, you don't know what the future holds. You may lose your spouse, you know? It's that community that you have invested in that will help you mourn if it's a divorce, or God forbid if it's a death situation, you know? So it's good to take your space sometimes.
Well answered. Okay. The Bible says the husband is the head of the household. Does that mean it's okay for him to treat her however he wants? Does she have any say in making decisions?
Yeah, when God made Adam and Eve, he took Adam from, I like the way, what they say, Auntie Ellen says in the book Patriarchs and Prophets, it says that God took Eve from Adam's rib as his equal. He didn't take Eve from Adam's feet that he could stand above her, and he didn't take Eve from above Adam either. They are equals. And so it's important for a man to treat his wife the way Christ would treat the church, right? There's a lot of men who don't treat their wife the way Christ would treat the church. And so yes, husband's the head of the household, but he's only the head of the household in sense of him being the priest of the household, in terms of him being accountable to God. If you remember, when Adam and Eve sinned, who did God go to? God went to Adam. Even though Eve was the one who had eaten the fruit first, God went to Adam first, because Adam is responsible as a priest to hold his wife accountable. But it does not mean that she cannot have say. No man has all the answers in the world, right? A lot of men don't know. They have to learn. So to say that the man does whatever he wants, no. And we see many examples in the Bible where men paid the price for doing whatever they want. And often they needed a woman that God would provide for them to help balance them. And God speaks to women as well as men. Now, God doesn't only speak to men, he speaks to women too. So it's never, the man, he calls all the shots, right? When it says he's the head of the household, he is a spiritual leader of the house, which means that he needs to lead by example as a spiritual leader. But it is a team effort, and they are equal. They are equals in front of God, and they work together. So it's not I'm the man, I'm the boss. You know, there are many examples in the Bible where horrible men made horrible decisions and destroyed their families. I don't think God was in favor of that. And often maybe they listen to their wife as well. They can learn. It's both people need each other. But the man has to be the priest of this house in terms of spiritually being an example and leading us. I'll give you this statistic and then we can move on. We take that and we make it as every man's a dictator. Do you know who starts almost all the wars in the world? You think it's men or women? Do you know who 90% of the people in prison is? Who do you think it is, men or women? It's men. Men have our own issues we have to deal with. Men are far from perfect. A man under the control of God, following God, is a man worthy to be followed. But if he's not following God, it's like the blind leading the blind. It's the blind leading the blind if a man's not following God. It's men who start wars. It's men who kill each other all the time. It's men who have high car insurance because we drive recklessly at times, although there are some bad female drivers too. But in general, yeah, I would say this. This is why I think that's more about spiritual. I'm going to share a statistic and I'll be done with that question. They said when a woman joins a church, at the most, there's a 50% chance that she can bring her husband and her family with her. They said when a man is involved in the church, there is an almost 90% chance he can bring the rest of his family with him. And so that's more on the spiritual side as you being a leader. When a man follows God, it's much easier for his wife and his children to also follow God. So the emphasis is on, are you being a good spiritual example in your house? It's not, oh, are you a dictator calling the shots, not consulting God, being bossy? No. Are you a good example spiritually for your house, for those in your house to follow?
If I may add to that, I think you answered beautifully. One example I typically give, when you have a business, you're the owner of the business, but you actually choose a CEO. You don't have to lead your business, right?
That's a great example.
You're the one that chooses the CEO. So, woman, you're choosing your CEO. You're choosing whoever is going to be head of your household. If Jesus, can you say you trust Jesus fully? Typically people will say yes. If a husband is supposed to be like Jesus, you're technically not supposed to be scared of them being the head of the household, because technically I would be happy if someone else would be head of the household, because they're supposed to be making the hard decision. If my wife wants something and I want something, a proper head of the household, they're going to put well, they're going to think about everything. But typically me, I would sacrifice my happiness for my wife, right? So they need to be equipped to be the head of a household. If they're not equipped, they're not ready to be the head of the household. They're not ready to be married. So obviously don't go that far, right? So it's definitely something that God, I truly believe, intended, but you do have a say. You do have a say who you allow to be the head of a household. Who do you choose to marry? It's a choice. If you don't think you fully trust that person as you trust God, obviously it's not the same, just example, or not really example, but do not marry them, right? You have to make sure they're qualified to be the head of the household.
Yes.
That was great.
That was amazing.
That was a great point. There's nothing else to say to
Yes.
that. That was a great point.
Yes. I mean, I'm just saying, like, for me as a single woman, I do say, like, can I trust this guy to lead me? Like, where are you leading me? Are you leading me to the devil, or are you leading me to Christ? Like, so ask yourself that before you even marry the person. Like, can I trust you to, and God will show you signs, definitely. Okay, what if you don't feel respected or happy with the one you're married to? Is it wrong to leave them? Is it wrong to leave them or divorce them even after you prayed for them so long?
That's a tough question, and why I say that question is tough, because the Bible, when Jesus comes in the New Testament, he says, when he comes as a human in the New Testament, he's specific pretty much about divorce. It's infidelity and death. If this is just unhappy, it's tough, because God wants us to work and we can learn and we can get a breakthrough from it. But it's not so black and white, to be honest with you. Like, I have two sisters. Like, if my sister was married to a man that's physically abusing her and verbally abusing her, but he hasn't really cheated on her, he's still alive, obviously, then it's like, all right, God, well, the text said, like, all right, it had to be infidelity or death. But in a situation where my sister's life is on the line, and if she stays in that house with this guy, she might die. Maybe he's got to go to jail. Maybe we got to call the police. I don't know what is going to be the situation for his physical, whatever he's doing. But I think it is something that you have to speak to God for and see what God says too at the same time. That's a tough question. We can't even say, because if they're not changing and they don't want to make the decision to change at all, and you've been praying and praying and praying and praying and praying and praying, you have to be careful not to say, well, let me just run out and get somebody else. Because you might have children, and that has an effect on certain things. It's not easy. It's not easy. Sometimes you got with someone and you were serious about God, or you weren't serious about God at the time, and then you become serious about God later. That's a tough situation as well. It's not so black and white, to be honest with you, for this question. I think if your life is not in danger, and it's not, kidding, your family's life is not in danger, I think you still try your best and ask God to help work it out, right? In God's timing. Because what does praying so long mean? Does praying so long mean you were praying for 6 months and you're like, God, I'm tired? Is praying so long 2 years? Is praying so long 3 years? But God does want people to work on their marriages. He wants them to work on their marriages. I feel I don't want to add to the word of God. I can't add or take away from God's word. But one thing I would consider is, if your life is in danger, if there is physical abuse, I don't see why you should remain with someone, especially if they're beating you and, you know, and your life is in danger. I don't think you should be with them, you know? But besides that, like if your life's not in danger, it's not infidelity, the person hasn't passed, I do think God does want you to work on it, you know? But again, it's not so black and white. I wish I could say this, that, and the third, but there's so many unique situations where someone did try and the person never changed, and it is frustrating, you know? It's a good question. I don't know. What do you think?
I think sometimes, okay, first of all, it's sort of like assess where the issue started, right? So you don't feel respected or happy. I think 9 times out of 10, we don't walk into a situation already feeling negative or already unhappy. Usually there's a root cause, like something happened. Maybe you feel the disrespect may have come from maybe the way the person talks to you. That might just be a communication issue where you explain like, hey, and sometimes it's hard to assess your own feelings. You have to sit down and be like, what is it that makes me feel disrespected? Why am I unhappy? What could make me happy? What do I feel this person is contributing or not contributing? I feel like it all starts with the conversation. But clearly from this question, maybe the conversations have happened, the prayers have happened, you've tried everything. And sometimes we just don't really know how to communicate with each other. So I know a lot of people don't believe in that, but I would suggest taking it a step further and going to therapy.
Therapy, yeah.
God, do not neglect God. He's number one. While you're going to therapy, you're not stopping the prayer. You have to continue to pray. But, you know, God gave us a brain, and there's people that went to school and they learned the science of the mind, and they know what questions to ask that you may not understand about yourself or the other person. And it can help you brainstorm and come to some kind of resolve.
Well said.
So I actually have something to say. I actually don't have a answer directly for that, but I believe a question before mentioned, can you keep your independence or something like that, like for women? I think if you did, or hopefully you did, and you still have close friends, etc. What I truly believe in, when I did get married, I did tell my groomsmen, right? They're technically going to be part of my marriage in a sense. So the Bible does says if something, you know, you have something with someone, bring another person, and if it still don't work, you know, bring 2 or 3 more person, and then, you know, etc. I think if you have a good friend that is hopefully friends, both of you guys, yeah. Hopefully they could actually come as well to kind of, yes, be a good mediator for you guys, because I do strongly believe in properly communicating, and I think we've been mentioning that throughout this whole session. Properly communicating, you know, your thoughts, and that should happen way before, right? So way before, you know, before you get married, you know, tell your opinion. But if something is happening, you should definitely have a serious talk to say, hey, this is going on. I don't like it. How can we move forward? Or what can we do to make it better, right? And if they're not listening, because I think they mentioned the question was disrespectful, yes, you definitely should bring someone else to be in the middle, because sometime when you bring someone else, they're not going to be too disrespectful. I think is going to force them. I think there is going to force them to listen more, right? Because a third party is now in, especially if you bring it to the pastor. They're not necessarily going to be disrespectful, I think. So I think that's one thing you could do.
That's a great point.
Thanks for sharing.
I got my bad. Real quick, I know with men, like they get real accountable when their own friends
Get involved.
get involved. I know that if I had a friend who was disrespectful to his wife, I'd be like, I'd drop you like a bad habit, you know. Yeah. I can't be friends with someone like that, you know. So especially like having good male friends that can help, you know, keep you in check.
That's important.
Very important.
So transparency and accountability. That's what I'm hearing.
Mm-hmm.
All right. We're almost done. What is the Bible stance on dating? Should it be one at a time, or can we date multiple people at a time until we find the right one?
So I think in the Bible, you see, you know, it's Eastern cultures in the Bible, right? It's Eastern, what you call Afro. The Bible is what you call the Afro-Asiatic book. And so you're looking at culture does influence the courting process, the relationships in the Bible. Okay. So you have to keep that in mind as you read the Bible. But the Bible, there was a lot of arranged marriages. There was a lot of, you know, things that necessarily aren't kosher per se in today's society. But I do think you should not be dating multiple people at a time, but you can sort of be observing multiple people, right? So if you are in a situation and you're at let's say you were at a church and there were multiple people that you say maybe they can be potential, but I don't know them. I think the best thing is, I don't want to sound corny, but you never hurts to just be somebody's friend. There's no pressure. Like, be their friend and see them in a low pressure environment, right? Because if they know that you're trying to get with them or they're trying to get with you, they're gonna put on a show for you sometimes, right? It's so important to just be the person's friend and see them and observe them. Like, I feel like people are so impulsive. I think people like, I see someone, they're attractive, I need to get their number, let me make this happen. Sometimes you gotta relax, observe, pray. Like, you know, like they're gonna position, take your blood, okay? Like, relax and observe. Attractive does not mean that they're the person, that person is for you, right? And so it's important to be friends in a safe way where you can observe them, have conversation with them as a friend. And that should be part of your interview process for you personally. And you're also praying to God. You say, God, hey, there are options out here. And that happens. There might be multiple people that might stand out to you. And you're like, God, who do I choose? God, I don't know. Who should I pursue? Who do you want me to pursue? Well, God, show me. As you're their friend, God revealed things. And conversations, things slip up, right? You can see how they deal with other people. And being their friend really takes pressure off you. It takes the expectations out for them. And you can just, in a clean way, observe and see what God is revealing to you about that person. So, like, if you're going on a date every other night with someone, well, I mean, that's a lot. And you never know where the date can turn into something, and there's certain attachments, and then your judgment gets cloudy. It's really important to just do it as a friend. I remember when I was in college and different places, like when I was growing up, like I made sure, and you gotta be my friend. Like, I got cool with you, and more so my last year at Temple. I didn't know Myriam my first couple years at Temple. And I was in the Haitian student organization, Bible study group, general classes. There was a lot of I remember Nets used to come to AY, and Leo used to come to AY. There was a lot of women around me. Doesn't mean, oh, there's women around me, I need to get them. No, like, they were like my friends and my sisters. And they'll tell you, I was respectful. I never went past boundaries or anything like that. But I learned a lot about myself through those friendships. I learned a lot about what I wanted through those friendships. I learned a lot of things through those things. So I'm telling you, that's what I do. Like, that's what I did. Like, you're my friend first. I don't care how attractive you are. I don't care if every guy's going after you right now. I need to hurry up and go do it. No, you are my friend first, and I need to observe you. And God needs to show me things, right? That's huge. You don't have to go on a date, right? Now, if you're courting someone, you will probably go on a date. I get that. I'm not saying you can never go on a date. No, I'm not saying that. Before you even get to that, though, you should always be friends first. I'm telling you, you cannot go wrong with that. You need to see how they interact with their friends, see how they interact with other things. What are their interests? So you gotta observe, prayerfully observe, and say, God, reveal to me. It's safe. Before you get to that date, you need to see them as, you need it as a friend. That's my take.
I have nothing to add.
I love that. How should a person handle a situation if both that person and their friend are interested in the same person?
I think you have to be honest with each other as friends, and it starts with a conversation. The thing is that this is a common situation. What brings friends together is the fact that they have things in common, and a lot of times it will be this maybe the same type of interest. We are friends because we have commonality. We have things that we both like, and sometimes that includes our taste in men or women. If you're a man, and you know, even to piggyback again on what I discussed this morning, friendships have to be based on transparency and being honest. And sometimes just having a simple conversation might make you realize that, hey, maybe neither. Okay, you could figure out who is more interested. Maybe I'll let you go and I'll let you have this relationship, or vice versa. And a conversation could even clear out that, hey, this thing we are feeling for the same person is not even worth our friendship. And sometimes maybe that is the test your friendship needs to know whether or not, you know, this person should remain friends with you. Now, I have to be honest, in a situation that, you know, maybe the guy is interested in your friend and not interested in you, or vice versa, and that really hurts your friend, it might affect your friendship. It really might. But, you know, with the test, sometimes it just takes time. Maybe eventually the friend or you will get over it and then come back together. And 9 times out of 10, that's what happens. 9 times out of 10, people grow out of it, they get over their feelings, and they come back into a friendship. But it's also important to assess with prayer and taking your time as well. Is this interest in this guy or girl worth my friendship? Am I really genuinely interested in this person? Do I feel like God has something for me with this person? Or I just think they're attractive, or, you know, is it just infatuation? In which case it's not worth losing your friendship.
Amen. All right, this is together. What if your relationship with your parent is estranged and they disrespect you? Is it wrong to not want the parent-child relationship because of all the hurt? What if the toxic relationship is between a parent and a child when there's verbal abuse and mental abuse?
You can start with.
Okay. This is really hard. This is definitely hard to deal with. And I feel like on some level, we all have a little bit of toxicity in our parent-children relationships. But one thing I've learned through my own experiences, and you know, it only made sense to me as I got older, take the time to get to know your parents' upbringing, their background. Find out some of the traumas that they've been through, because it explains why they behave the way they do or they treat you the way they do. And sometimes starting with that information can help you heal, or even know how to talk to them in order to, you know, better your relationship. And with that also, I would add, even though this is way harder, I think, especially with our culture, sometimes family therapy can help as well.
Yeah. I would say, yeah, you know, our parents come from an interesting culture. You know, I've heard stories about my grandfather and the legendary baton he used to give his kids. I mean, liguas, everything. I mean, and I'm looking at it, and I was talking to my mom's older sister, and she was like, you know, we were in Haiti, you know, it was tough. She said, it wasn't like here where you talk and you ask your kids questions. She was like, you couldn't have a relationship with your parents a lot of time. It was you know, a tough hierarchy, you know, which is, I get it, you know, but like Myriam said, you got to see your context to who your parents are. You know, they are usually a product of their own environment. And so a lot of times toxic parents come from toxic parents.
Mhm.
And so you don't have to be if you're old enough and you're independent. I'm not saying you should remain in a toxic environment. You should always love your parents and ask God to show you how to love your parents. But you know, I think the secret is this: if you find that your parent is coming between you and God, I think it's okay for you to take some distance. You must love them, though. I'll give you a biblical example. In Luke chapter 2, Jesus goes to the temple. His parents forget him in Jerusalem. They come back looking for him. And they're like, we've been looking for you. Where were you? And Jesus has an answer that almost comes off as like flicker. He says, didn't you know I had to be about my Father's business?
Mhm.
In front of his earthly mother and his earthly father, he declared, I love you guys, but my heavenly Father comes first. I love you guys, but I'm not going to let you come between me and my heavenly Father. And I think that's the same thing we can learn from Jesus as well. Jesus loved his parents. He loved his parents. On the cross, when he was dying, he tells his youngest disciple, John, he's like, yo, John, that's your mom. My mom is your mom. Look out to my mom for me. Jesus is half dead, and he's not even thinking about himself. He's thinking about his mother. He's like, he's telling his disciple, look after my mom for me, please. He loves his mother, but his mother wasn't perfect. When Jesus was at the wedding, his first miracle, his mother was like, oh, my son can turn the water into, it's actually grape juice. They say wine, but it's grape juice. You got to know the Greek, but it's grape juice. And Jesus says, woman, it's not my time yet.
Yeah.
Parents love their kids, most parents. I would say 98% of parents are good for trying their best. It's not easy being a parent. Some parents are toxic, but as long as it's, you have to take that context. But if your parents are toxic and it's hurting you verbally, physically, spiritually, and there's a lot of abuse, yes, you might have to seek help, right? In a situation, you might have to seek help for that situation, and you have to take a distance, right? But if it's like, maybe they have some default, but they're not perfect and they're working on it, you can work with them, So it all depends on the situation you're in, So it's not necessarily easy, but most parents love their kids. It's just not easy. And so there's no book that tells you exactly how to be a parent all the time. And so a lot of parents are learning as they go along. That's why sometimes parents end up being better with their grandkids than their kids because they have more experience. They're like, oh, I wish I knew to do that more, or do this. And so if they're not physically hurting you, like if destroying your health, mostly or spiritually, you can try your best to work with them. But if it's really bad, you can continue to pray for them. Maybe you do need to take a distance from them. But the biggest thing is, don't let it get between you and God. That's the biggest thing. If they're getting between you and God, sometimes you might have to take a space, but you still pray for them. Still pray for God to speak to them. But never hate them. Sometimes you got to take a space, but don't hate them. Pray that God will continue to speak to them and try to heal it.
Mm-hmm.
Amen. I think this is our last question. You mentioned in your sermon, so Myriam, about the woman being created for the man as help. Please explain further the extent of help meant in this verse. So help meet.
Help meet, it means, again, it's similar to the term that they use called equally yoked. So when I was a kid, I remember like help meet, it's like almost, it's parallel to the term equally yoked. So you'll hear say, don't be unequally yoked. But in church, they say things, but they don't explain it. I thought whenever they said yoke, I thought about like egg yolk growing up. It's not egg yolk. A yoke is an instrument or a tool used in farming. I'll give you an example. Let's say there's two oxen, right? And Myriam, she's an animal, I'm an animal, and we're plowing in the field. They will put this wooden yoke, so it goes over my head and shoulders and over her head and shoulders. So two animals are in the field working together, and they're able to do double the amount of work. What happens is when you say help meet, one of the issues for help meet is you're able to work together. But when you say unequally yoked, one of the animals is much stronger than the other animal. Let's say she's stronger, now I'm weaker. This animal's doing all the work, and it weighs down, and it slows the amount of work down, it slows the productivity down, and it affects them. Help meet means you guys are both equal to each other. You guys both enhance each other. You guys are both helping each other, and you're equally yoked. You're not exactly tit for tat the same person, but you're able to be productive in your ability to get things done. So when it says help meet, it means that you guys are just there to support each other spiritually. Right? It can't just be one person who's reading their Bible and praying and the other person. Let me tell you what I find with a lot of Haitian families in the church. The man is like into the Bible. The man is more like the Bible. He's into his word. And the woman is like the prayer warrior. Right? both need to do a little bit of something here and there and support each other, right? Help me means you encourage each other and support each other physically. So maybe we support each other and try to eat healthy or trying to exercise. Maybe we support each other being there and in conversation with each other. Help me means that you're there together, working together as a team.
Complement each other.
Yeah, you complement each other.
Amen.
Hold on 1 second. I want to make sure we're not missing the whole part of the question.
Please explain the help me.
Okay, so yeah, help me is not, I want to make sure I didn't miss any part of the question. It doesn't mean that, oh, everything's about the man and the woman's his helper. They're two equals. They are actually two equals, and there's a yoke over them. They're working together to support. All they mean is supporting each other. You support me and I support you. That's it. You support me and I support you. I want to mention one thing. Is this the last question right there?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so let me
snap. There's more than okay. This is 1, 2, 3.
Okay, so let me just mention something. Sometimes in our communities, we do have a situation where our Haitian parents are only like, oh, you just do what only I say and what I do. And, we can't really, so our culture, it's hard to bring therapy into our culture. It's hard to bring therapy into our culture. And some of our parents are very, very, very strict. And I don't know, because if it's not my parents, I don't know how to go about certain things like that. But I think it's important to, if there's another family member you can trust and bring in, like if you're the child and your parents are incredibly strict, they don't give you any wiggle room. And it doesn't mean they do it on purpose. A lot of times they think that's the best way. Yeah, they really think it's the best. But I do think if there is a family member that they trust, or you guys all trust, that you can maybe bring it up to, or maybe at a certain time in a polite way, ask questions, like in a polite way. Sometimes you have to ask your parents why, but not in a rude way. Maybe it's like, okay, how can this help? Or what do you think would be best? And so just praying about it and going to someone that you can trust. If your parents are not open to like therapy and it's really toxic in your house, I don't know, maybe there's someone else you can find, and someone else you can find that you can sort of confide in, and maybe they can help take steps, and maybe they can help orchestrate things with your parents. If your parents are not getting it from you, maybe someone, an adult that you can trust, that you believe won't throw you under the bus, but they will help step in and help orchestrate ways to communicate with your parents and maybe open their minds to where you're coming from.
If I may add to that, is that sometimes you're not going to get a solution. That's just what it is. We have these questions and we have these forums, but sometimes you don't get a solution. Sometimes we have to live with certain burdens. If you're old enough, you can go to therapy for yourself. Even if it's things that are like inflicted on you, sometimes you just need to focus on you to do your own healing, even if you're unable to relieve the pressure, i.e. your family. Sometimes there's just no solution. Sometimes it's just time. And also with our culture, we know how stubborn our parents can be. I spent a long time in childhood trying to change my parents, it was a waste of time, okay? Sometimes the reality is there are things that are just not going to change until you have your own independence. And if you can't find an adult that you can speak to, a trusted friend. Sometimes you just need someone to unload things. That friend of course, that friend's not going to come to your house and fix it because they're a Timun just like you. But you have that listening ear to just, unplug.
I think we can just take one more question.
Okay.
I understand God created sex for marriage. However, how will I know if sex will be good between us if we aren't having it before we truly commit to each other?
Well, first it shows a lack of faith, right? Here's what I say, right? Here's the thing that people need to understand. How do I know if it's good? Here's the thing about what would make any sex good is someone who's thoughtful. I told you, I was a older woman I knew who was like, hey, she didn't know when she got divorced, she didn't know, like, and they said what makes it good is when someone's thoughtful, when someone is thoughtful. anybody can learn. It's all about communication. It's all about communication, right? When Adam and Eve first had sex, did you think they know how? Did you think they were like, hey, well, I don't think I'm gonna marry you unless I have sex with you first? You think they were gonna do that in front of God? God was gonna be like, no. He was like, no.
That's not the plan.
Here's the thing: the way the media portrays it and society plays it, and the way they hype it up. Really, the secret is when you get married and you start to have it and you're exploring, it's being thoughtful and asking what the person likes. Everybody's different, right? You can figure it out. You can figure it out. It's not like, oh, you get married, you have sex once, and that's how it's going to be for the rest of your marriage. Every couple that ever, let's say they waited to get married, right? What it was the first time they did it, wasn't what it was the 50th time they did it. They get better and better and better and better. So they know each other so well that they know exactly how to please each other.
Right.
People, like, well, I don't know if the person's going to be good. The person can adapt and change and adjust and all these things. No one ever, the first time they ever did it, ever had it all figured out. Ever. They had to learn. They were like, all right, they had to learn things. And if you're with someone who's thoughtful, you'll say, okay, person like this, person like that. They adapt. And they figure out what it likes. It's all about communication. It's a physical thing, but you got to communicate with each other.
Also, the danger is because you might be coming from a background of already having had sex before getting married. So, you've been and now you're just like, how do I go back to, what if you're getting married with someone who doesn't have the same experience as you? Like Jonathan said, practice makes perfect, right? You start a certain way, but you can communicate what you like and what you don't like. So this is something that you can work at. Whether or not you are happy with what you're getting in the first, few moments of marriage or not, you can always work on it. And I would say the danger with, because obviously from the way the question is worded is that, oh yeah, no, you should test drive before you get married so you know what you're getting. But what happens if every time you try, you don't like what you get? So how many people are you going to sleep with?
Right.
Or you find that one, what if it takes 50 people before you have a good experience? That is not God's ideal. And that's hurting you in the long run as well. It's bad for expectations. And those expectations will always be unmet. And your sex life also is part of the whole work of marriage. Just working to make the marriage work, working to understand each other on every level. So if you trust in God, you can't go wrong.
Yeah. I mean, I would imagine as long as two people love each other, they'll figure it out.
Yeah, you'll figure it out. It just got to communicate. That's it. But we let the media dictate and show us like, when you get in it, you've got to be some superstar, and people go in there with these unrealistic expectations. Like, it's unique for every couple. And so really the secret is listening to the other person and finding and asking questions and figuring, and then you'll get your rhythm, and you'll enjoy it. And that's what it comes down to. That's really what, there's a lot of people who are not happy in what they're doing, and it's because they don't listen and communicate. It's so that portion is overhyped in the sense that like, oh, you've got to be the best at this. What fits or worked for some person might not work for somebody else. Just communicate and you'll figure it out as you go along. That's the secret.
I think there was a question on there that I asked, and I think a lot of the youth have this question: where do you meet someone? Because it seems like the church doesn't have anyone.
I would say it's in the church. It is tough. If you're only in your church, you'll think that there's no one in the church. Let me tell you something. If I can speak for the Adventist church, there's more than 1 million Adventists in the United States alone. There's more than 1 million. It's not a high percentage in the U.S., but there's 1 million Adventists. Like, don't let your church or your city be the church I grew up in is in Poughkeepsie, New York. I met Myriam in Philadelphia. Imagine if I never left Poughkeepsie and was like, you see, there's nobody in the church. Jonathan, did you go to Philadelphia? Did you go to New Jersey? Did you go to Boston? You haven't been to every church. There are definitely people in the church, but if you're only using Shekinah or Philadelphia as your pool, of course you're going to see that there's limited options. Philadelphia is one city out of how many cities in the U.S.? Shekinah is one church out of how many churches? So sometimes like youth conventions, other programs, stuff like that, you can really be introduced to other young Adventist Christians and really mingle with them and get to know people and sort of see that there are more options than what you see in your own little community, right? So that's something to consider. And sometimes you could meet someone in school or somewhere, whatever, but again, it's just a lower chance that they would have the same belief as you do. That's it.
Right. Yeah, like I work in healthcare and people be like, girl, you didn't find a rich doctor yet? I'm like or not as DA, they're not as like they don't care about, so. But wow, I can't thank you guys enough. This was so good. It's like you don't find these valuable information. Like if only the youth would understand how valuable this information is for them. Like, people pay for this, and it was so good. I can't thank you guys enough for sacrificing your time and answering all these questions. Like I know I learned a lot, and I know that the people who made it till the end learned a lot. We have this recorded, so we'll gonna share it, and it was such a blessing. We could stay here all night, but we know you guys have to go, and I don't know if any of the youth have one last word or anything else before we wrap up. But again, thank you guys so much. Like,
we want to say thank you to you for organizing this.
Yes,
thank you for organizing this. Yes, this was a great
problem. It was really good, really good. I really I took in so much. So if there's nothing else, I just want to pray over you guys, cover you guys in prayer, because I know the devil, he hates marriages. He hates love. He's trying to ruin couples and households. And I think that as long as we're on this planet, we're never safe. Like we always have to be covered in prayer. So I admire you guys for, being an example to the Haitian community, to these young people. I know they look up to you guys. They do say it all the time in the car when I be driving with them. So I'm going to pray, close the Sabbath, and send you guys, if you guys have no one else have anything else. All right, let's pray. You guys want to close? Let's start avec nous. Oh, it's okay. Is that too much?
Sure.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, let's pray. Dear most kind, gracious Father, thank you, God. Thank you so much for all that you have done for us. Thank you for this beautiful Sabbath day, beginning with the weather and the beautiful sermon, and also this Q&A. Thank you for your grace and your mercy that you give us, God. We know that we fell into sin, and the devil, he has been causing havoc on this planet, but God, you have not given up on us. It's because of you that we can even experience love. If it weren't for you, we would be miserable, just living to die. So thank you for caring about humanity and coming down here and suffering for us and dying on the cross. And even though you died, you resurrected, you're still working for us, and you're giving us gifts like marriage, and you're always in our lives. And we just want to thank you so much for all that you do for us. We want to ask you, please forgive us of our sins, all the ways that we hurt you. God, I want to lift up a special prayer for the Coicous. I want to thank you for what you've done in their lives and how you've kept them thus far. And I pray that you would help them to always put you first in their lives, to always remember that you're the glue, and that without you, they cannot do anything. I pray for their marriage. I pray that you would continue to help them to grow in you. I pray that they would go to heaven together and, live with each other in heaven and go to each other's mansions and things. I just pray that you would bless them and keep them and walk with them. I pray for all the youth on this line that were able to make it till the end, that they learned something from it, and that if marriage is in your will for them, that you would bless them with happy marriages as well, so that they can reflect your glory. Thank you, God, for all that you do for us. Please be with us throughout the rest of this night, this upcoming week. Protect us, keep us in your arms. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. Amen. Thank you, guys.
Bye, guys. We had a great day together.
Yes, we did. We love you guys. Bye.
Love you guys.